You are listening to Live Free with Rebecca Packard. With this podcast, Rebecca will help spiritual entrepreneurs and mompreneurs experience emotional freedom so that they can create calm and balance in all areas of their life. If you're ready to release your emotional baggage, trauma, and that constant feeling of overwhelm, then you are in the right place. Your journey starts now. Here's your host, Rebecca Packard.
Hello, welcome. In this video, we're going to be talking with Marisa Imon and talking about meditation and moving through dark spaces of depression and trauma and different things that weigh heavily on us, and how we can use meditation to allow ourselves to open up, to release, and to move forward. Hello, Marisa.
Hey, dear love. So glad to be here with you, and so glad you're doing this topic. This is so important.
We're so excited to have you. Marisa is an Amazon bestselling author. She is a master meditator and has recorded thousands of meditations at this point. You've probably heard her and not even known it, because she's in a lot of different areas. If you've heard any of the Ollie meditation, she's one of those wonderful voices in the background. And one of the things that Marisa finds herself doing on a daily basis is practicing her own meditation routine and showing up for herself in that space. So Marisa, you have a long history. We've had you on the podcast, and anyone who knows me or has worked with me knows of you and your history and your own battle with depression. But can you give them a little background of you, and then we'll talk more about how you're using meditation to help move yourself and others into a space of being able to feel their emotions, show up in life, and move forward with ease and grace.
Definitely. Oh, I love this topic. So, since we have talked more in depth about my story, I'll just do a really short version.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I ever had major depression, I was 10 years old. And I'd always been a very intense child. I mean, my dad said when I was an infant, if he had to choose one word to describe me, it would have been intense. Like, I don't know what infants can do to be intense, but I was always intense. And I thought I had to hide that. I thought that I had to put this giant smile that we choose our bodies in this incarnation. I chose to have a giant smile to hide behind. And I hid. I thought, I don't want anyone to know I'm so depressed. I don't want anyone to know I have so much anxiety. I don't want anyone to know that I think about killing myself multiple times a day. Like, I was a quick, just get me out of here. I'm ready to go. And meanwhile, I was voted friendliest in my high school senior superlative. Like, everyone thought I was this bubbly, happy person until I was 19, and it progressed to bipolar type 1. I had to withdraw from school, and no longer could I hide all that I was going through. So I was heavily medicated. I was told that's just how you have to live forever. People with bipolar type 1 can live very happy lives as long as they're medicated forever. This was the message I got everywhere. And I'm not anti-medicate. I'm not anti-anything. I'm pro doing what feels right to you. And it got to a point where I was like, I'm either at the mercy of my moods or the mercy of my meds. Like, if I don't take a pill, I feel awful within minutes. And I was on really high doses of a lot of different things. And I realized it was kind of like a quarter of life crisis moment of, this can't be the next 75 years of my life. And I decided there has to be a better way. And I realized all the things I'd been choosing to believe up until then were a choice. I thought they were facts, but actually everything we choose to believe, we think they're facts, but it's a choice. Everything we believe, it's a choice. We're choosing to believe it. And so I had been believing that my depression was bad, that my anxiety was bad, that any emotion below neutral was bad and it needed to be hidden and you needed to act like you were fine. And I was like, well, what if I choose to believe that it's good? What if I choose to believe that every emotion below neutral is just another expression of love? What if only love is real, and therefore every emotion below neutral is just a wounded part of me wishing I would turn around and give it a hug? What if it's a teacher? What if it's guidance? And turns out, when you, I don't want to say you, this is my personal experience, when I changed that perception, and I've seen a lot of people I've worked with do the same, and I started to love and accept every emotion through not running away from it, right? I used to run away from it through work, through my social life, through binging and purging, through self-harm, whatever it was. I was like, avoid, avoid, avoid at all costs. And of course, with law of attraction, the more we're like, no, 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 the more we're a match for things that make us feel, no, no, no. So I was just digging myself deeper and deeper into a hole. But the beauty of non-resistance, the beauty of welcoming in the depression, welcome in the anxiety, welcome in the trauma with love, and recognize it's just a wounded part of you wanting you to love it, to hug it, to create again, to learn from it. I think of it now like guidance. It's rumble strips on the side of the road. Every time I feel an emotion below neutral, instead of getting mad at it, instead of trying to ignore it, that's the equivalent to just continuing. If, say, you hit the rumble strips and then you just keep going off a cliff, like, screw you, rumble strips, I'm going for it. Like, why not listen to them? Like, why not be like, oh, you're trying to tell me something. Hey, thank you. Thank you for doing your job. You are so wonderful. You have a hard job, right? You have to feel that pain. I so appreciate you for being here, fear. It turns out every emotion below neutral is just a fear-based emotion, and that creates the depression. So accepting it, loving it, appreciating it, and using it to create again, that has made all the difference.
Yeah. So in the space of meditation, when you are looking to move forward and you're using meditation to come into the space of being able to meet those emotions, that we have so many emotions, you guys. People experience thousands of emotions a day. And a lot of the times they are not always the emotions that we really like. They're negative responses and interactions and triggered spaces and programs and conditions and all these different things that have happened in this life, have happened in past life, have been social interactions. And how are you able to use meditation to come to a space of being safe and experiencing your emotions?
Now, this will look different for everyone, and for me, it's different day to day. Sometimes for me, the meditation that I most need in that moment is a mindful walk in nature where I'm connecting to my breath, my body. I'm getting really in my body, feeling it move as I walk, feeling how as I breathe in, I'm breathing in the oxygen from the trees, and as I breathe out, I'm giving them carbon dioxide so they can breathe in, like feeling that cycle. Sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's sitting in the feeling that I'm having and just breathing into it and letting that feeling know, I love you. I accept you as you are. And I think, everyone's idea of meditation is different. I know a lot of people have spent a lot of money to learn one technique of meditation. And so, that's the only way. But as long as whatever your technique is helps you to be present with you without running away from what you're feeling, and it gives you a feeling of acceptance of your emotions, especially the emotions below neutral. I actually avoid calling them negative because that labels them as bad, and they're not bad. Knowing that they're not bad, there's nothing wrong with them. They're a part of you, and nothing about you is bad. All you are is love. Every aspect of you, even the emotions below neutral, are love because they're just there to help you create again. So my favorite technique is to simply sit and notice, where does that feeling below neutral live? Where am I feeling it in my body? Is my chest feeling tight? Is my stomach feeling knots? Is my throat feeling closed? What is it? Tune into it and let it know, hey, dear darling, I love you. I'm here for you. You're allowed to feel whatever you feel, and I will love you through the feeling. And it's almost like a Russian doll technique. Like you are the outer doll and you're holding the inner doll that feels like the pain, and you're letting it know, Whatever you need, I'm here. You feel. Because most likely, whatever's triggering us now is because of something that happened when we were too young to process it. And so it's still active. That vibration is somewhere in you. And then you went about your day and somehow went into a situation that triggered that old feeling. And so now you're in a situation where you're like, that really shouldn't have bothered me so much. Why does it? Perhaps little you is looking at that as an opportunity for, now that you're older and wiser, to finally go back and let little you know, hey, dear darling, you're allowed to feel what you want. And I just sit with it and let it know you're loved and accepted through what you feel. And then I can feel as if that emotion feels loved, feels seen, and it just kind of lifts up and feels lighter and freer. And it's because there's non-resistance around it. Whatever we resist persists. So if we're resisting the bad emotions, that's a made up thing. They're not bad, first of all. But the more we resist them, the more we're in energy of having that feeling of resistance. So it's that loving arm, open armed approach of holding it, loving it, and letting it be that has been the most helpful for me personally.
A lot of the times, I like that you say it, the things that we resist persist. Many people will push and resist and try and defy feeling bad or feeling not good or feeling less than love. And these are all just stereotypes. These are all just other things pushed upon that cause us to feel separate from self. And so when we feel separate from self, we're out of alignment. And so
that's all those feelings are. It's just letting you know you've separated from who you really are. Who you really are views everything as love, knows that everything you've been through was all part of divine timing, divine planning, and from the viewpoint of your eternal self. You know, the time your boss screamed at you isn't as big as we make it in the moment. It's actually just part of us gaining more data for bigger desires.
So in a space of meditation, how often do you meditate?
So when I first started, because I didn't believe I could meditate, and I was, this was after 25 years of ignoring my emotions and being heavily medicated for ADD. Like, if anyone knows Adderall, I was on 90 milligrams a day. Like, that's a super high dose. And so I believed from all the messages I'd gotten from doctors and whatever that I couldn't meditate, that it just wasn't for people like me, especially since I was weaning myself off of medications. Not something I recommend, but anyway. So what I did to start was I would put meditations on, like guided meditations, in my headphones and just walk around with my dog. I would just go for walks and listen to them. And because of that, it made me focus on my breath, like the very simple things that I just hadn't ever done. And then over time, and I would do that every morning and every evening for my morning and evening walk with my dog. That really helped out. And then I was like, all right, I think I feel like I could sit and do this now. And so then I would sit and do it. And then over time, I was like, I think I can do this without guidance. And then I realized I get visions. When I sit in stillness, I receive visions. And then for several years, probably about 7 years, I was doing daily meditation. It wasn't so much necessarily morning and evening anymore. It was just whenever. It's about 5 years of morning and evening, and then a couple years of whenever I felt like getting my daily meditation in, sometimes multiple times a day, sometimes once. But now it feels, Rebecca, like life has transformed into a meditation. And so whereas before I kind of needed it, it's almost like I replaced the medications with the meditation. Unlike the medications, which if I didn't take them, I'd be a mess. I don't want to say the wrong words. Meditating was like that for a while. Like, if I missed my meditation, I was like, look out, world, I'm unhinged, But over time, the momentum of being in my body in my physical experience, connected to my breath and my body, over time, that momentum built so much that it's very rare that I don't feel present, connected to my breath, my body, the weight of gravity, feeling access to the non-physical. So now it's more about, okay, I know I'm going to create a song today, and like I feel inspired to, let me sit down and just like tap in before I do that. Or I know I'm going to make a meditation for my podcast Incandescent. Let me sit down and receive before I do that. So now it's always, not always, probably 90% of the time, so that I can create something. But that just proves how beneficial daily consistent meditating was for me, because with the medication, it didn't have that result. If I didn't take it, that then that was it. Then things were going to get messy. But over time, the difference with meditating is, over time, I just feel like, yeah, every moment feels more grounded, stable, and like a meditation. And it's not every moment really, but it's the majority of the time. And
Mm.
sometimes I slip. And so in those times, I'm like, all right, I know I got to get on my mat. I got to sit. I got to connect to my body. I got to breathe. I got to connect to the non-physical, but it's not like I need it, like I needed it when I first started. If that answers your question correctly, let me know if I can clarify that.
Yeah, no, that's good, because I think a lot of people get turned off to meditating because they think, well, I can't do this. I didn't take a class, or I don't have a special mat, or I don't have a special room or a special pillow, or I don't have 45 minutes where I can sit in a quiet space. And I don't think that that is necessarily what anybody needs. And so it's perfect that the beginning of your meditation practice was as just putting on a meditation on your headphones and going out for a walk. So she wasn't on a mat, she wasn't in a room, and she wasn't sitting still.
And some
So
people would say that's not considered meditation, but I don't know what then you would call it. And if it helps, then what difference does it make? And it
right.
was the segue I needed to get to a point of sitting in stillness. And that's why I created the podcast Incandescent. It's designed where if you want to listen to it while going for a walk, listen
You
to it
can.
while going for a walk. That's just as beneficial. And it can be the difference in you thinking you can't meditate to you realizing, oh, actually, I have been more present while I was walking. Why don't I try doing this in stillness? Why don't I try doing this in silence? That can be all the difference. Dip your toes.
Mhm.
And there's so many different kinds of meditation out there. Find what works for you. That's the beauty of this life. You get to do what works for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you can have a 3-minute meditation. You can have a 45-minute
I love a
meditation.
3-minute meditation. Holy goodness.
Right?
I feel
It's
like
like a power nap.
I feel like I get so deep so fast. I feel like when it's longer, I give my mind more time to like have other thoughts. But if I know I'm doing a short one, I get real deep real fast, and then I'm like, "Ooh."
Oh, yay. Yeah. In the space of having meditation, having a practice, and now having a prolonged years of meditation under your belt, if there was something that you could share that could help people start their practice, what would that be?
There's no way to do it wrong. I think a lot of
Mm.
people think if you have to, this is what I thought. You sit in stillness and your mind is completely silent, and that's a successful meditation. But sometimes you could sit in stillness and your mind is just reeling the whole time, and you just are only able to focus on your breath for maybe 3 breaths out of 10 minutes. Even that is progress. Even that is beneficial because you were with yourself. You weren't trying to run away from yourself. And the beauty is that it's like any other muscle. I mean, like, okay, I suck at basketball, but that's because I don't practice it. That doesn't mean like I could never play it. So if I were to commit to practicing and playing, then maybe I'd be good at it. So even if right now you're like, oh, I suck at meditating, well, cool. Try it a little longer. Keep at it. You could use the technique I did if that works for you of segueing into stillness. And maybe you start with 30 seconds of just focusing on your breathing. Then you build up to a minute. Then you build up to 2 minutes. And whatever you do, this, to me personally, is the key. The practice of non-judgment and acceptance, letting whatever is be perfect as it is. You are perfect as you are. Whatever thoughts are coming and going, whatever, they're perfect as they are. Nothing to judge, nothing to get hung up on. Let it all be. Because again, if we get into the energy of resistance, like, oh, I don't want that thought, bad thought, go away thought. If I were to say to you, don't think about green, what are you thinking about? Green. So we can't push away things. We can allow them to naturally float away on their own as we shift our focus towards love, towards our breath, towards our body. And it's the more and more we do it, the more it becomes second nature. And we might still have a sit sometimes after 8 years where I'll sit down and I'll just be thinking a lot of the time. And then I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm meditating. And then I'll return to focusing on my breath, dropping in, and then maybe I'll think about something else. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm meditating, back to the breath. And it's like, cool, that happened to you. Awesome. Let it be perfect as it is. Practicing non-judgment and acceptance towards whatever your practice looks like, for me personally, is the gift that keeps on giving. Because then the next thing you know, you've trained yourself to be accepting and non-judgmental towards your thoughts. When you're in a meeting and you say something and you're like, oh, what will they think about it? It's okay. Whatever they think, they think. Nothing to judge here. Let's just keep moving. Nothing to judge. Nothing to judge. You know deer paths because you live in New Hampshire. If people aren't familiar with deer paths, they're trails in the woods that almost look like a trail, but hardly. Like you could get down it, but it'd be very tight in the woods. This is because deers walk through them. Deers, plural?
Deer?
Deer? They'll walk through them in a line. So it's very, very thin. Meanwhile, a logging trail is where a truck has gone over this trail over and over, and it's wide open. And so perhaps our brain pathways are wide open because our brains are very similar. We have logging trails and we have deer paths. And a lot of our logging trails this was me personally, I'm not good enough. My life is not going to work out for me. I can't have the things I want. I have to work hard to barely get by. Like all these things were like giant logging paths in my mind. And the beauty of meditating without judgment is the less attention I gave those things, because I'd just be like, okay, that's a thought. And I just wouldn't give it attention. The more those trails closed up and became deer paths, I may find myself on that trail every now and then in my mind, but it's less and less all the time. And I wouldn't be surprised if eventually the trail closes up completely. Meanwhile, the deer paths that were like, I'm lovable, I'm worthy, those were small trails in my mind. Over time, the more I love and accept myself, especially through meditation where you're just accepting yourself as you are, those trails become logging paths, and they're giant, and it's easier for you to travel down them every single day.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I like that analogy because our brain is constantly having those connections. Our neurons, our pathways are always having those different interactions, and the ones that are used more and more are the stronger frequencies. And so for us to sit in that space and connect in that space, we can really empower ourselves by connecting more with that space of love, with the space of gratitude, with the space of self, and realign those spaces that have been conditioned and go, yeah, we'd like this path to be wider and more used, and that one to be less. In the space of moving in practice of meditation, in a space of looking at how meditation has helped you in your daily life, what would you say to the aspects of meditation in your daily life and how it's helped you?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I was riddled with self-hatred, self-loathing, depression, anxiety. Where I went, everything I did, I would question it later, like, you idiot. How I can't believe you did that stupid thing. Like, these were the thoughts and the feelings that were constantly in my head. Oh, I would look at my face and my body and be like, oh, you're so ugly. Like, get out of here with that. Like, I just was beating myself up all the time. The voices in my head, my voice in my head was just mean. And now, oh, it's like, oh, dear darling, I love and accept you. You're beautiful as you are. Now I feel like I just can grasp the grander aspect of who I am in the non-physical, because meditation really helps open us up to the fact that it's more than just this. And even when I wasn't still fully connected to the more than just this, that's acceptance changed everything. Like if I were to look in the mirror, especially in the early transitioning stages, and I'd have a thought of, you ugly loser, like no one will love you. I would have that thought as I looked in the mirror, and I'd be like, oh, I accept that thought. I love the part of me that is so scared that it feels that way. And so even though I was having those thoughts, they didn't hurt me as badly because I wasn't fighting them. I wasn't pushing against them or resisting them. I was honoring the fact that that was a part of me that wanted to say what it said. And I was like, okay, you're allowed to feel that. We won't feel that forever, though. And it was a gentle transition over time that led to, really, I still say that I live with bipolar, but I don't know if that's accurate anymore. Because I feel things intensely, and momentum can lead, I have to catch myself, right? Like I mentioned earlier, when I get momentum towards, I can't remember if I said it in this interview, but when I get momentum towards like feeling high energy, right? In the past, that could have led to a manic episode. But now I just know, okay, that's a sign for me to slow down a little, for me to ground in my body, to connect to myself. And I feel like I have a better understanding of the technology that my emotions are. Their guidance all the time. If I feel very strongly with fear towards something, that signifies I have a strong desire for its opposite. And if only love is real, which it is, in my opinion, then that's all the fear is a reminder to reconnect with my desire. And I can choose not to. I can choose to stay in that fear, but that's a choice. And that's something I didn't believe before. I thought if someone were to tell me, you're choosing to be depressed, I would have wanted to slap them. But now I know from my personal experience that it is a choice. And I couldn't feel it as a choice because of the power of law of attraction. So when I felt low over and over and over, that gained more momentum. So I was a magnet for more things that made me feel depressed. And that piled up over 15 years. So I was in a deep, dark ditch, far away from the light. And so it was hard to believe that I could choose to be up there in the world with other humans who had like sunlight around them. Like, what? How do they have happiness? I don't get it. But it was that acceptance and that non-resistance that meditation gives us that helped me feel those good feelings again. And it was a continual commitment every single day and every single moment to ask myself, what fear-based thought am I thinking right now? Does this serve me? I love and accept you and thank you, fear-based thought. I'm ready to choose again. And continually going through that process that made all the difference.
Yay. That's good. That's great. What was I going to say?
I'm not even sure if I answered. I forgot what your question was. I hope I answered it.
No, you totally did.
Okay.
You're good. Well, because the other thing is like people want an instant fix. They want something to be boom, done, finished. And
I get that.
In the space of life, that's not reality. It took you 15 years to get where you were. It's going to take you more than one day to get out of that space. And that's all of us. All the things that we go through, all the different things that show up in life. We have to untrain ourselves to be in certain areas, and sitting down in a meditation, sitting down and connecting with breath, sitting down and connecting with self, showing up, actively choosing to show up in the space of refocus, rebalance, redirecting is all pertinent to being able to move forward from those spaces, to move in a different direction from that darkness. So,
And the cool thing is that everything's relative. So my first year of that commitment, and it was such a commitment. I was like, and it still is, my primary thing is me. I'm my primary job. I have to be, because I live unmedicated with bipolar type 1, which is not recommended. So I know I have to make myself my number one priority. And it's so cool because, like, that first year, I was like, wow, my life is so much better. Then the next year, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy. I bet I'll never be happier. Next year, oh my God, like everything's even better. And it's all relative, right? Especially when you were constantly wanting to kill yourself, like to come to a place of, I'm the best person ever. I love looking at myself. I love myself so much. I'm my best friend.
right.
Like, I'm my best friend. I'm my dearest love. What? I didn't think that'd be possible. And so the cool thing is that even if it does take a long time to get to the point of, like, I'm my best friend and my own dearest love, the growth is still relative to where you were. So it will still feel so much better within that first year than where you were before. And that the love that you tap into is 100 times stronger than the pain and the fear. It's 100 times stronger. So even though it took me 15 years to get to that deep, dark place, I mean, I was there all 15 years, really, but it did just keep getting darker and darker. I think if I could get this far in 8 years, I'm so excited to see where I'll be in 6 more years.
Right.
15
Yeah.
years of focusing on love is infinitely more powerful than the 15 years I spent focusing on or trying to run away from my fear.
Mm.
It was the running away that wasn't serving me.
Yeah. The running away doesn't ever serve, does it?
Because then it's like something's chasing you. And so if you believe something's wrong, then something's wrong. If you believe your emotions are good and they're here to serve you, then they're good and they're here to serve you. You're the one who gets to choose.
Fantastic. Well, I think that this has been super helpful for so many people in the space of learning meditation, showing up in meditation, knowing that, you guys, there's no wrong way to meditate. You don't need a special certificate. You don't need to be spending hours doing it. Just find what works for you and continue. Choose every day to practice. Practice makes progress. I always say that. It's not perfection, it's progress that people should be looking for. In this moving forward, if there was one thing that you would like to share with people in the space of meditation in their practice, formal or non-formal, what would that be?
This is going to sound silly to a lot of people, but for some people, they might need it. So this is what I want to say. Until I was 18, I was breathing wrong, and I didn't know that. A lot of people are. So especially being afraid of looking like, I don't know, I was so obsessed with my weight for so long. I would always suck my stomach in. But if you look at a sleeping baby when they breathe, their belly expands, or look at your dog, their belly expands when they breathe in because air is entering their lungs, and then it contracts as they breathe out because the air is leaving. And I know this is probably old news for a lot of people watching. Thank you for your patience. But if you were like me and this is news to you, this makes a huge difference and it helps with anxiety. So what I do, and I'll do this, one time I was almost in a car accident and I felt my heart racing. And this was not shortly after, a few years after I'd been doing this work. So I knew when this happened that when our heart is racing, we're breathing through our upper chest, and that signals to our body that we're unsafe. So what I did is I put my hand on my heart and one hand on my belly, and I made sure that the chest hand stayed relatively still while the belly hand did all the work. Stomach expands, stomach contracts, ribs remain relatively still. It's impossible, I think, for them to be perfectly still, but like the emphasis is on the belly. And doing that style of breathing when you're feeling anxiety signals to your body that you are safe. Everything is okay. You can slow down. Breathing through our chest signals the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And if we're in that response all the time because we're always breathing through our chest, then we're just adding to our stress, anxiety, fear. So, as often as you can, breathe through your belly. Belly expands as you breathe in and contracts as you breathe out. That will help let your body know it's safe for you to slow down.
Yeah. And a lot of people, it's crazy the numbers that they give for a percentage of how many people are shallow breathers compared to belly breathers. And then the studies that back the fact that if you can participate in taking 1 to 2 times a day and practicing that particular belly breathing that Marissa's talking about, it not only will it allow you to release inflammation in your body, people have recognized that they lose weight by doing that on a regular occasion, and all kinds of amazing things. We will add the links to those different studies in the notes from this session.
And one more thing about the belly breathing, if you blush a lot, like I would get really like anxious and blush in certain situations, pushing my belly out and doing the belly breathing really intensely and like really focusing on it in those moments slows down that response as well.
Oh, there you go. That's interesting. I don't know much about that part of it, but
just my personal experience.
Just your personal experience.
But I can't imagine like my body's that different from other people's bodies.
No. Well, well, it has been awesome having you here and having you share your expertise in meditation and how it's helped you on a lifelong journey of finding balance and peace and giving yourself the power to show up every day. We thank you for being here, and we're going to be adding links to Marissa's show Incandescent in the notes to this. You'll be able to find those all in the show notes and different ways you can connect with her and about different areas on utilizing breath work and meditation in your life. So we are glad that you're here, and we will see you in the next session. All right.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And we want to hook you up because you're a loyal podcast listener. So head on over to www.rebeccapackard.com to get a special introductory price when you sign up for an emotion code session. Head on over to our website at www.rebeccapackard.com.